The millionaire went to catch a plane, to go home, and when he saw the flight attendant's ring, he started to break into a cold sweat right away. It was simply the same one he had given to his ex-girlfriend 24 years ago. Subscribe to the channel to follow more exciting stories like this one. Jonathan Pierce stared out the window of his private jet, his mind elsewhere as the English countryside rolled beneath him in patches of emerald and gold. At 57, he had mastered the art of compartmentalizing his emotions, a skill that had served him well in building his real estate empire. But today was different. The news of the fire in his neighborhood had forced him to cut short his business trip to Dubai, and now here he was, heading back to London earlier than planned. The cabin crew moved efficiently around him, preparing for landing. As the senior flight attendant leaned over to collect his barely touched scotch, something caught his eye. A flash of blue on her right hand. Jonathan's breath caught in his throat. The sapphire ring on her finger was unmistakable, its distinctive Art Deco setting exactly as he remembered it from 24 years ago. He had chosen that ring carefully for Sarah, spending weeks searching for the perfect piece that would match her eyes. The memory of her wearing it during their last summer together surfaced with unexpected clarity. Her smile, the way she would twist it around her finger when she was deep in thought. The tears in her eyes when he told her he needed to focus on his career. "Excuse me," he found himself saying, his voice slightly hoarse. "That's a beautiful ring you're wearing." The flight attendant, Emma according to her name tag, smiled politely. "Thank you, sir. It was my mother's." Jonathan studied her face more carefully now. She appeared to be in her early 20s, with familiar blue eyes and a gentle curve to her smile that tugged at his memories. "Your mother? What's her name, if you don't mind me asking?" "Sarah Matthews," Emma replied, a hint of curiosity crossing her features. "Though she goes by Sarah Romano now, she owns a pizzeria in Notting Hill." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Sarah Matthews. Of course, she had changed her surname, but it was her, the same Sarah he had left behind all those years ago. And this young woman standing before him with her mother's eyes and his own determined chin. I knew your mother," Jonathan managed, his corporate composure cracking slightly. "A long time ago." Emma's professional smile faltered for a moment as she studied his face more intently. "Mr. Pierce? Jonathan Pierce?" She had clearly heard his name before, though perhaps never with warmth. "Yes," he replied, his throat tight with emotion. I believe I'm your father." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with 24 years of absence. Emma's hand, the one with the ring, trembled slightly as she gripped the back of the nearest seat. Her professional demeanor wavered, revealing a glimpse of the vulnerable young woman beneath. "I need to prepare for landing," she said finally, her voice carefully controlled. She turned away, but not before Jonathan caught the storm of emotions in her eyes, the same eyes that had once looked at him with love, now reflected in his daughter's face. As Emma disappeared behind the curtain, Jonathan sat back in his leather seat, his mind reeling. How had he not known? The question pounded in his head with each beat of his heart, but he knew the answer. He had been too focused on building his empire, too convinced that ending things with Sarah had been the right choice for his career. He had never looked back, never wondered why she had stopped trying to contact him after their breakup. Through the remaining minutes of the flight, Jonathan's thoughts raced. The sapphire ring had found its way back into his life, bringing with it a truth he had never imagined. As the plane began its descent into London, he made a decision. He had spent his life building towers and closing deals, but now he faced his most important project yet, building a bridge across 24 years of absence. The landing gear deployed with a gentle thud, and Jonathan Pierce, master of real estate development and corporate negotiations, found himself planning how to approach a small pizzeria in Notting Hill. For the first time in decades, his next moves wouldn't be calculated based on profit margins or market trends, but on something far more valuable, the chance to know his daughter. The plane touched down smoothly on the runway, but Jonathan barely noticed. His eyes were fixed on the curtain separating him from Emma, wondering how many times they had crossed paths in the sky without either of them knowing the truth. The sapphire ring had changed everything, casting its brilliant blue light on a past he couldn't change and a future he desperately wanted to build. The bells above the door of Romano's pizzeria chimed softly as Jonathan pushed it open the next afternoon. The warm aroma of fresh basil and baking bread enveloped him, and for a moment he was transported back to his early dates with Sarah, when they would spend hours in little Italian restaurants, dreaming about their future. The restaurant was cozy but immaculate, with red and white checkered tablecloths and walls adorned with black and white photographs of Italy. A few early dinner customers sat at corner tables, and the sound of laughter drifted from the kitchen. Jonathan recognized Sarah's laugh immediately. It hadn't changed in 24 years. She emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, her familiar smile freezing when she saw him. The years had been kind to her. Her dark hair was shorter now, streaked with elegant silver, but her eyes were just as bright as he remembered. "Jonathan," she said quietly, her hand instinctively reaching for the counter to steady herself. "I suppose I should have expected this after Emma's call." He stepped forward, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "Sarah, I didn't know. All these years I had no idea. Would it have made a difference?" The question wasn't accusatory, just weighted with 2 decades of single parenthood. "You were very clear about your priorities back then." "I was a fool," Jonathan replied, the words coming easier than he expected. "But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I want to know my daughter, if she'll let me." Sarah studied him for a long moment, then gestured toward a quiet corner table. As they sat down, she called out something in Italian to the kitchen staff, and soon a young man brought them 2 cups of espresso. She still remembered how he took his coffee. "Emma is most extraordinary," Sarah began, pride evident in her voice. "She's working as a flight attendant while she develops her business plan. She wants to start a logistics company focused on helping small businesses like mine. She's always been independent, determined to make her own way." Jonathan couldn't help but smile, like her mother. Sarah's expression softened slightly. "She has your drive too, Jonathan, and your head for business, but she's her own person. She's worked hard for everything she has." "Tell me about her," Jonathan said softly. "Tell me everything I missed." And so, over cooling espresso and fresh-baked focaccia, Sarah began to share the story of their daughter. She told him about Emma's first steps in the back room of the pizzeria she had just opened, about the childhood drawings that still hung in her office, about the teenage years when Emma would help with deliveries, while dreaming up ways to make the system more efficient. "The ring," Jonathan said finally. "I recognized it on her hand yesterday." "You kept it all these years?" Sarah nodded. "I gave it to her on her 18th birthday. I told her it was from someone who had once loved me very much, someone who had helped make her possible. She's worn it ever since." The afternoon light slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the checkered tablecloths. The dinner crowd was beginning to filter in, bringing with them the busy energy of early evening. "I know I have no right to ask," Jonathan began carefully, "but I'd like a chance to know her, to be part of her life if she'll allow it. I can't change the past 24 years, but maybe—" "That's not my decision to make," Sarah interrupted gently. "Emma is an adult. She'll decide if and how she wants you in her life. But Jonathan," she paused, making sure she had his full attention, "if she gives you that chance, don't you dare waste it. She doesn't need your money or your connections. She needs a father who will show up, who will listen, who will respect her choices." Jonathan nodded, understanding the weight of Sarah's words. The empire he had built, the deals he had closed, the buildings that bore his name across London, none of it seemed as important as the challenge before him now. As he stood to leave, Sarah called out to him, "She has lunch here every Wednesday at 1 o'clock. She comes to help me with the books and try out new recipes." She gave him a meaningful look. "Just in case you're interested." Jonathan stepped out into the London evening, the bells chiming behind him. The scent of basil and tomatoes clung to his clothes, and his mind was already counting the days until Wednesday. He had built his career on careful planning and strategic moves, but this would require something entirely different. This would require patience, humility, and most importantly, the courage to show up with his heart open, ready to receive whatever his daughter was willing to give. The following Wednesday arrived with London's typical spring drizzle. Jonathan found himself standing outside Romano's pizzeria at 12:45, his heart beating with an unfamiliar rhythm. He hadn't felt this nervous since his first property acquisition 30 years ago. The weight of the leather portfolio under his arm offered little comfort. Inside was Emma's business plan, which he had obtained through his corporate connections. Through the window, he could see Emma already seated at a corner table, her flight attendant uniform exchanged for casual business attire. She was typing furiously on a laptop, her sapphire ring catching the light with each keystroke. Sarah moved between tables, serving customers with the easy grace of someone who had built their domain from nothing. The bells announced his entrance, and both women looked up. Sarah gave him a slight nod before disappearing into the kitchen, leaving father and daughter to navigate this moment alone. "May I join you?" Jonathan asked, standing respectfully distant from Emma's table. Emma studied him for a moment, her expression guarded but not hostile. "I suppose we need to have this conversation eventually," she said, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. Jonathan sat down, carefully placing the portfolio on the table. "I've been looking into your business plan," he said, then immediately regretted starting with business rather than the personal. But to his surprise, Emma's eyes lit up with interest. "How did you know about that?" "I have connections at several logistics companies. When I mentioned your name, they remembered your proposals. They were impressed, Emma, very impressed." A slight blush colored her cheeks, but her voice remained professional. "I appreciate the research, Mr. Pierce, but I'm not looking for investors. I want to build this company on my own terms." "Jonathan," he corrected gently, "and I'm not here as an investor. I'm here as—" He paused, uncertain how to define himself in her life. "I'm here as someone who would like to learn about your dreams if you'll share them with me." Sarah appeared with 2 plates of margarita pizza, the restaurant's signature dish. "Family recipe," she said with a meaningful look at both of them before retreating again. Emma picked up a slice, the familiar motion revealing her comfort in this space. "Why now?" she asked finally. "Why after all these years?" Jonathan considered his answer carefully. "Because I was lucky enough to recognize that ring. Because the universe gave me a chance I don't deserve. Because—" he took a deep breath. "Because I've spent 24 years building things that don't matter half as much as the relationship I could have had with you." Emma's professional facade cracked slightly. "Mom never said anything bad about you, you know. She just said you had different priorities." "She's kinder than I deserve," Jonathan admitted. "Your mother built all this while I was chasing my ambitions. She created something real, something lasting. She taught me that success isn't just about profit margins," Emma said, her voice softening. "It's about building something that matters to people." Jonathan looked around the bustling pizzeria, seeing it with new eyes. "That's what you want to do with your logistics company? Build something that matters?" Emma nodded, her enthusiasm breaking through her reserve. "Small businesses like Mom's, they struggle with delivery services, inventory management, coordination. The big logistics companies aren't interested in them, but together they represent a huge untapped market. I want to create a network, a community really, that helps them compete with larger chains." For the next hour, Emma shared her vision, her hands animating her words, just as Sarah's used to do. Jonathan listened, occasionally asking questions that made her pause and think, but mostly he just absorbed the passion and intelligence of the daughter he had never known. As the lunch crowd thinned, Emma glanced at her watch. "I have a flight to catch," she said, beginning to pack up her laptop. "Emma," Jonathan said quickly, "I know you don't need my money or my connections, but if you ever want to discuss strategy or bounce ideas around, I'd be honored to listen." She stood, adjusting her bag on her shoulder. "Same time next Wednesday." The words came out as a question, tentative but not unwilling. "I'll be here," Jonathan promised, and he knew with absolute certainty that nothing short of a global catastrophe would prevent him from keeping that promise. As Emma left, Sarah approached his table, refilling his coffee cup. "Baby steps," she said quietly, watching their daughter through the window. "She's giving you a chance, don't rush it." Jonathan nodded, understanding the wisdom in Sarah's words. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither were relationships. But for the first time in decades, he felt like he was building something truly worthwhile. The Wednesday lunches became a ritual over the next few months. Each week Jonathan would arrive at 12:45, and Emma would already be there, her laptop open and her mind full of new ideas. They developed a rhythm, these hours carved out of their busy lives, a space where father and daughter could slowly begin to know each other. Emma learned that beneath her father's corporate exterior lay a mind that could dissect complex problems with remarkable clarity. Jonathan discovered that his daughter had inherited not only his business acumen, but also her mother's warmth and intuitive understanding of people. On this particular Wednesday, Emma was explaining her latest challenge. The software solutions available are all designed for large-scale operations, she said, frustration evident in her voice. Small businesses need something more flexible, more personal. Jonathan listened, watching her twist the sapphire ring on her finger, a gesture so like her mother's that it made his heart ache. "Have you considered developing your own software?" he asked. "That would require capital I don't have," Emma replied, but her eyes lit up at the possibility. "And expertise I haven't found yet." "I might know someone," Jonathan said carefully, always conscious of respecting her independence. "A brilliant software developer who specializes in small business solutions. Would you be interested in meeting her, just to discuss possibilities?" Emma considered the offer, her initial hesitation giving way to practical consideration. "As a consultant? On my terms. Absolutely no strings attached." Sarah, who had been wiping down nearby tables, joined their conversation. "Remember when we first opened, Emma? How you used to draw pictures of flying pizzas because you thought delivery by air would be faster?" Emma laughed, a sound that delighted Jonathan every time he heard it. "I was 8, Mum. But you know, with drone technology developing—" "Don't even think about it," Sarah warned, but her eyes twinkled. "My pizzas stay firmly on the ground, thank you very much." The easy banter between mother and daughter reminded Jonathan of all he had missed, but also of how fortunate he was to be here now, watching them, being gradually included in their world. "The pizzeria's anniversary is coming up next month," Emma mentioned, turning to Jonathan. 15 years since Mom opened it." 15 years, Sarah mused, sitting down with them for a moment. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I was fighting with the bank for a loan, trying to convince them that a single mother could run a successful restaurant." Jonathan felt a familiar pang of regret, but Emma's next words surprised him. "Would you come to the celebration?" she asked him. "We're having a special dinner for regular customers and family. Mom's making all her signature dishes." The invitation hung in the air, weighted with significance. This wasn't just another Wednesday lunch. This was Emma actively including him in a family celebration. "I'd be honored," Jonathan replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Thank you." Sarah squeezed his shoulder as she stood to return to work, a gentle acknowledgement of how far they'd all come. The gesture reminded him of their young love, but without the sharp pain that such memories used to bring. Instead, there was a quiet gratitude for how life had brought them full circle, different but perhaps wiser. As their lunch drew to a close, Emma paused in packing up her things. "I have something to show you next week," she said. "I've been working on detailed projections for the first year of operations. Would you look them over?" As a father, not an investor, Jonathan felt the distinction keenly. She was asking for his guidance while asserting her independence, finding a balance that worked for both of them. "I'd love to," he said simply. Outside, the London summer was in full bloom, filling the streets with warmth and light. As Jonathan watched Emma disappear into the crowd, he realized that success could be measured in many ways. Sometimes it was in the height of buildings or the size of bank accounts, but sometimes it was in the simple act of showing up every Wednesday, earning trust one lunch at a time, learning to be a father 24 years late, but with no less love. Summer was fading into autumn when Emma arrived for their Wednesday lunch with an unexpected guest. Alice Chen, the software developer Jonathan had recommended, was clutching a laptop and practically bouncing with excitement. "You have to see this," Emma said by way of greeting, her usual professional reserve replaced by barely contained enthusiasm. "Alice has created something incredible." Jonathan watched as the two women set up their presentation, struck by how naturally Emma had taken to leadership. In just a few months, her logistics company had evolved from a concept to a tangible plan, with growing support from the local business community. "We've developed a prototype," Alice explained, turning the laptop so Jonathan could see the screen. Emma's insight about small businesses needing personalized solutions was brilliant. "Look at this." The interface was elegantly simple, clearly designed with busy restaurant owners in mind. Sarah, who had joined them during her break, leaned in with interest as Alice demonstrated how the system could track inventory, manage deliveries, and coordinate with other local businesses to share resources. "We're calling it Local Link," Emma said, the sapphire ring catching the light as she gestured towards the screen. The idea is to create a network of small businesses that can support each other. Mum's Pizzeria is our first test case. Sarah smiled proudly. The delivery coordination feature alone has already saved me hours of work, and being able to share transport costs with other restaurants in the area. It's revolutionary for small businesses like mine. Jonathan studied the prototype, impressed by how much thought had gone into every detail. You've considered the scalability? He asked, slipping momentarily into business mode. That's actually why we're here, Emma replied, exchanging a glance with Alice. We've had interest from several business associations in other London boroughs. They want to implement Local Link as soon as it's ready. We need to move faster than we planned. Which means you need capital, Jonathan said, understanding immediately. Emma nodded, straightening in her chair. I've prepared a formal presentation for potential investors. Would you look it over? As someone with experience in scaling up businesses. The careful way she framed the request wasn't lost on Jonathan. Their weekly lunches had built a foundation of trust, but they were still navigating the delicate balance between personal and professional relationships. Of course, he replied, matching her professional tone. When would you like to schedule the presentation? Actually, Emma said, a hint of nervousness creeping into her voice, I was hoping you could come to a full presentation next week. We're hosting it here, after hours. Mom's cooking for potential investors, and Alice will demonstrate the software. It would mean a lot to have you there, as my father. Jonathan felt the weight of those last 3 words. This wasn't just another business meeting. It was Emma inviting him deeper into her world, trusting him with her dreams. Sarah, who had been quietly observing, squeezed Emma's shoulder. I'm trying out some new recipes for the presentation. Jonathan, you'll have to help us decide which ones to serve. As if on cue, she produced a plate of arancini with a new truffle filling. The familiar comfort of Sarah's cooking mixed with the excitement of Emma's venture, creating a moment that felt both professional and intimately familial. Alice watched the family interaction with interest. Emma, should we show him the community support feature? For the next hour, they walked through the platform's features, Jonathan offering occasional suggestions that Emma noted carefully. The rapport between Emma and Alice was evident. They completed each other's sentences and shared the same vision for how technology could support small businesses. As the lunch crowd began to filter in, Alice packed up her laptop. I'll update the presentation with those suggestions, she said to Emma. Same time tomorrow for our development meeting? After Alice left, Emma turned to Jonathan. Thank you, she said softly, not just for the introduction to Alice, but for being here, for listening. Thank you for letting me be here, Jonathan replied, equally soft. Your mother built something amazing with this pizzeria, and now you're building something equally special with Local Link. I'm proud of you, Emma. The words came naturally, but their impact was visible in Emma's eyes. Sarah, returning from serving customers, pretended not to notice as she refilled their water glasses, but her smile said everything. Next Wednesday, then? Emma asked, standing to leave. For the presentation. I wouldn't miss it, Jonathan promised. As he watched Emma leave, her confident stride so similar to his own, he realized that sometimes the best investments weren't about money at all. They were about time, patience, and the courage to show up when it mattered most. The evening of Emma's presentation transformed Romano's Pizzeria into something magical. Sarah had outdone herself, turning the cozy restaurant into an elegant venue. White tablecloths replaced the traditional checkered ones, and tiny votive candles cast a warm glow throughout the space. Jonathan arrived early, finding Emma and Alice doing final checks on their presentation setup. The sapphire ring glinted as Emma gestured animatedly, walking Alice through their speaking points one last time. Dad! Emma called out when she spotted him, the word still new enough to make his heart skip. Could you look over the financial projections one more time? I've made some adjustments based on your suggestions. As Jonathan reviewed the numbers, Sarah emerged from the kitchen carrying trays of appetizers. The aroma of her signature truffle arancini filled the air, mixing with the scents of fresh basil and garlic that were as much a part of the restaurant as its brick walls. Everything needs to be perfect tonight, Sarah said, arranging the food with artistic precision. These investors need to see what small businesses can do when they work together. It already is perfect, Jonathan assured her, watching Emma confidently arrange handouts at each place setting. She's perfect, Sarah paused in her work, following his gaze. "She gets her confidence from you, you know. That ability to walk into a room and own it. That's all Jonathan Pierce. But her heart, her understanding of what really matters, that's all Sarah Romano," Jonathan replied softly. Their moment was interrupted by the arrival of Alice's team of developers, followed closely by the first investors. Emma greeted each guest personally, her professional demeanor impeccable, but warmed by genuine enthusiasm for her project. Jonathan found himself moved to a different kind of pride as he watched her work the room. This wasn't just about business success, it was about creating something meaningful, something that could help other families build their own dreams. The presentation itself was flawless. Emma commanded attention from her first words, painting a vision of connected communities of small businesses supporting each other. Alice's demonstration of the Local Link platform drew appreciative murmurs from the investors, especially when Sarah stepped in to show how it had already transformed her restaurant's operations. "The beautiful thing about Local Link," Emma explained, her voice carrying clearly through the restaurant, "is that it's not just about efficiency. It's about preserving the heart of small businesses while giving them the tools to thrive. Every feature we've developed came from listening to real business owners, understanding their challenges, and finding solutions that work for them." One of the investors, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, leaned forward. "Miss Pierce, your passion is evident, but scale is always a challenge with community-focused ventures. How do you plan to maintain that personal touch while expanding?" Jonathan felt a surge of pride as Emma handled the question with ease, demonstrating both her grasp of business fundamentals and her commitment to the project's core values. She was, he realized, the perfect blend of his business acumen and Sarah's human touch. As the evening progressed, the formal presentation gave way to networking over Sarah's carefully prepared feast. Jonathan observed as Emma moved from group to group, answering questions and building connections. The sapphire ring caught the candlelight as she gestured, a constant reminder of the unexpected path that had brought them all to this moment. Sarah appeared at his side, offering him a glass of wine. "She's going to succeed, isn't she said, though it wasn't really a question. "Yes," Jonathan replied simply, "but not because of the business plan or the technology. She'll succeed because she understands what you taught her, that true success is about building relationships, not just profits." As the evening drew to a close, the buzz in the room was palpable. Several investors had requested follow-up meetings, and Emma's face glowed with quiet confidence. Standing together, father, mother, and daughter, they formed a picture that would have seemed impossible just months ago. "Next Wednesday lunch?" Emma asked Jonathan as the last guests departed. "Always," he promised, understanding that some investments yielded returns that couldn't be measured in monetary terms. "Good," Emma smiled, "because we have a pizzeria anniversary to plan, and I'm going to need both of your help to make it special." Looking at his daughter, successful and strong yet willing to let him be part of her life, Jonathan knew that sometimes the most precious things in life came disguised as simple Wednesday lunches and the courage to begin again. The preparation for the pizzeria's 15th anniversary celebration was in full swing. On this particular Wednesday, Emma arrived at lunch to find her mother placing old photographs on a table near the entrance. "Mom, what are these?" Emma asked, picking up a faded Polaroid of a much younger Sarah, standing proudly in front of an empty storefront, the For Lease sign still visible in the window. "Your father asked for them," Sarah replied, carefully arranging more photos. "He's putting together something special for the anniversary celebration." As if summoned by their conversation, Jonathan entered the pizzeria carrying a beautifully crafted wooden box. The rich mahogany gleamed under the restaurant lights, and an ornate R was inlaid in silver on the lid. "Perfect timing," he said, placing the box on the table. "I wanted to show this to both of you." Emma ran her fingers over the smooth wood. "It's beautiful. But what's it for?" "Open it," Jonathan encouraged, watching their faces with barely contained excitement. Inside, the box was divided into 15 sections, each lined with velvet. Sarah gasped as she recognized the first compartment's contents, the original lease agreement for the pizzeria, along with the bank's loan rejection letter that she had framed as motivation. "I didn't even know you kept these," Emma said softly to her mother. "Each section represents a year," Jonathan explained. "I thought we could fill it with memories, photos, documents, menu cards, Anything that tells the story of Romano's, and—" he hesitated briefly, "I hoped we might add some new memories too." Sarah pulled out a small dog-eared notebook from the second compartment. "My original recipe book. I thought I'd lost this years ago. Jonathan, how did you find it?" "It took some detective work," he admitted. "But Emma mentioned you used to keep your recipes at your sister's house, so I reached out to her." Emma was already exploring the other compartments. She found the newspaper clipping from the pizzeria's opening day, her own childhood drawings of pizza delivery routes, and countless photographs documenting the restaurant's growth. In one section, she discovered a familiar blue envelope. "The letter I wrote when I was 10, she said, amazed. "The one where I promised to help make the pizzeria famous someday." "And look how you're fulfilling that promise," Sarah smiled. "Local Link is already making waves in the business community." Jonathan watched them explore the box, noting how the sapphire ring caught the light as Emma carefully handled each memento. "There's space for more," he said. "I thought maybe we could add the Local Link launch documents and photos from the anniversary celebration." Emma looked up at him, her eyes bright. "Dad, this is incredible." The word "Dad" still felt new on her tongue, but it came more naturally each time. "There's something else," Jonathan said, reaching into his briefcase. He pulled out a sealed envelope. "I wrote this the night I discovered you were my daughter. I've been waiting for the right moment to share it." Emma took the envelope with trembling hands but didn't open it. I think I'd like to save this for the anniversary celebration. Is that okay?" Jonathan nodded, understanding. Some moments deserved their proper time. Sarah wiped away a tear, trying to hide it by rearranging the photos. "We should get back to planning the menu," she said practically, though her voice was thick with emotion. "Emma, what do you think about featuring a special pizza for each year we've been open?" As they began discussing menu ideas, Jonathan watched his daughter and her mother work together, their movements synchronized from years of shared experiences. The legacy box sat on the table between them, a bridge between past and present, holding both memories and promises for the future. "We could name one after Local Link," Emma suggested, already sketching ideas on a napkin. "Something that combines traditional Italian flavors with modern twists, just like how the software combines traditional business values with new technology." "The innovation pizza," Sarah mused. "I like it." "Jonathan, you'll have to be our taste tester." "I'd be honored," he replied, realizing that he was no longer just an observer of their traditions, but was becoming part of them. As their lunch hour drew to a close, Emma carefully placed the last photo back in the legacy box. "Next Wednesday, same time?" she asked, though it was hardly a question anymore. "Always," Jonathan and Sarah replied in unison, then laughed at their synchronicity. Emma smiled, touching the sapphire ring absently. "Good, because we have a lot more memories to make." With just 2 weeks until the anniversary celebration, Romano's Pizzeria buzzed with activity even during their quiet Wednesday lunch hour. Sarah had transformed the kitchen into a test lab, experimenting with 15 special pizzas to represent each year of the restaurant's history. Emma arrived to find her father already there, his suit jacket draped over a chair as he helped Sarah knead dough. The sight of the successful real estate magnate with flour on his sleeves made her smile. "I didn't know you could make pizza," she said, setting down her laptop. "Your mother taught me a long time ago," Jonathan replied, his hands moving with surprising skill. "Though I'm quite rusty." Sarah laughed, correcting his technique with a gentle touch. He was never very good at the tossing part, too concerned about making a mess. "Some things never change," Jonathan admitted, carefully shaping the dough on the counter. Emma opened her laptop, pulling up the latest Local Link data. "Speaking of changes, we've had an incredible response from the investor presentation. Alice says we can start rolling out to other neighborhoods next month." "That's wonderful news," Sarah exclaimed, sliding a pizza into the wood-fired oven. "Does this mean you'll finally quit the airline?" Emma twisted the sapphire ring on her finger, a habit that both her parents now recognized as a sign of deep thought. "Actually, that's something I wanted to discuss with both of you." Jonathan stopped his dough preparation, giving her his full attention. Sarah pulled up a chair, and suddenly they were just a family, sharing hopes and concerns over the scent of baking pizza. "I've been offered a position as head of corporate partnerships at one of the major airlines," Emma explained. "They're interested in integrating Local Link into their cargo operations, using our software to help small businesses access international shipping at affordable rates. That sounds like an amazing opportunity, Jonathan said carefully, noting the uncertainty in her voice. It is, but Emma hesitated. Taking it would mean less time to focus on Local Link's original mission, less time for Wednesday lunches. Sarah reached across the table, taking her daughter's hand. Emma, Tesoro, you've spent years building toward this moment. What does your heart tell you? That's just it, Emma replied. My heart is pulling me in two directions. The corporate position would provide stability, resources, connections. But Local Link, it's personal. It's about helping businesses like ours. And these Wednesday lunches, she looked at Jonathan. They've become more important than I ever expected. Jonathan felt a warmth spread through his chest at her words. You know, I spent decades chasing corporate success, he said thoughtfully. Building bigger buildings, closing bigger deals, but sitting here, helping your mother make pizza, being part of these Wednesday lunches, it's taught me that success isn't always about scaling up. Sometimes, Sarah added, getting up to check the pizza in the oven, it's about staying true to what matters most. The aroma of fresh pizza filled the air as Sarah placed her latest creation on the table. It was a perfect blend of traditional and innovative, prosciutto and figs with a balsamic reduction, one of the anniversary special pizzas. Maybe, Emma said slowly, taking a slice, there's a way to do both. What if we kept Local Link focused on small businesses, but created a separate division for corporate partnerships? That way we could use the resources and connections from the airline industry to support our original mission. Jonathan nodded approvingly. And the Wednesday lunches? Emma smiled, her decision becoming clearer. Some traditions are non-negotiable. Besides, we need our official taste tester for all 15 anniversary pizzas. Speaking of which, Sarah interjected, what do you think of this one? I'm calling it the future. Traditional techniques with modern flavors. As they savored the pizza, discussing flavors and possibilities, Emma realized that success could take many forms. Sometimes it was about finding the perfect balance between ambition and connection, between growth and staying true to your roots. 2 weeks until the anniversary, she mused, looking around the restaurant. It feels like everything's coming full circle. Jonathan and Sarah exchanged a glance, both thinking of the legacy box and the letter still waiting to be read. Sometimes the best moments were the ones still waiting to unfold, like pizza dough rising with promise and possibility. The evening before the 15th anniversary celebration, Romano's Pizzeria hummed with quiet energy. Sarah, Emma, and Jonathan had stayed after closing to finish the final preparations. The legacy box sat prominently on a specially decorated table near the entrance, surrounded by 15 years of photographs arranged in a timeline. I can't believe you found a picture of my first delivery run, Emma laughed, picking up a photo of herself at age 12, proudly holding a pizza box while wearing an oversized apron. I was so determined to help. You used to plan the delivery routes like military operations, Sarah remembered, hanging strings of tiny lights across the ceiling. I should have known then that you'd end up revolutionizing logistics. Jonathan stepped back from the wall, where he'd just finished mounting a large digital display. Speaking of which, shall we test the Local Link presentation? Emma nodded, pulling up the software on her tablet. The screen came to life, showing a real-time map of local businesses connected through the platform. Small dots represented each establishment, with lines connecting them to show shared resources and delivery routes. It's beautiful, Sarah said softly, watching the network pulse with activity. Each light represents a family business, a dream like ours. Emma touched the sapphire ring, a gesture that had become almost meditative. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been wearing this ring that day on the plane. The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Jonathan set down the string of lights he was holding and walked over to his daughter. I've thought about that too, he admitted, but I've learned that life has a way of bringing us where we need to be, even if we take the long way around. Sarah joined them, bringing over a pizza, the last test run of The Legacy, a special creation featuring ingredients that told their family's story. San Marzano tomatoes from her original recipe, fresh basil from the plant Emma had given her on her 10th anniversary, and a drizzle of truffle oil that Jonathan had introduced during one of their Wednesday tastings. As they shared the pizza, sitting at their usual corner table, Emma pulled out the unopened letter from the legacy box. I think I'm ready to read this now." Jonathan felt his heart race. "Are you sure you don't want to wait for tomorrow?" Emma shook her head. "Tomorrow is about celebrating with everyone, but this should be just us." With trembling fingers, she opened the envelope and began to read aloud. "My dearest Emma, tonight I learned that I have a daughter. The word feels foreign on my tongue, yet it fills a space in my heart I never knew was empty. Looking at you today, I saw glimpses of both your mother and myself, but more importantly, I saw an extraordinary woman who has built her own path. I cannot reclaim the years I lost, the moments I missed. I cannot go back and be the father who watched your first steps, heard your first words, or helped with your homework. These are debts I can never repay, but if you'll allow me, I would like to be the father who supports your dreams, who listens to your ideas, who learns from your wisdom. I would like to earn the right to be proud of the woman you've become, even though I had no hand in shaping her. The sapphire ring that led me to you was once a symbol of possibilities left unexplored. Today, it has become a bridge across time, connecting past to present, lost chances to new beginnings. My daughter, these words still feel like a miracle. I make you this promise. I will spend whatever time you grant me trying to deserve the honor of being your father. With love and hope, Jonathan." Emma lowered the letter, tears streaming down her face. Sarah was crying too, one hand on her daughter's shoulder, the other reaching for Jonathan's hand across the table. "Dad," Emma said softly, the word full of meaning, "you've already kept that promise." They sat together in the gentle glow of the hanging lights, three people who had found their way back to each other through time, chance, and the courage to begin again. Outside, London prepared for sleep, but inside Romano's pizzeria, the air was filled with the warmth of family, the aroma of fresh pizza, and the promise of tomorrow's celebration. The morning of Romano's 15th anniversary dawned bright and clear. Sarah arrived first, as she had every morning for 15 years, to fire up the ovens and begin the day's preparations. But today was different. Today, the small pizzeria would host not just its regular customers, but a celebration of family, community, and new beginnings. Emma arrived next, dressed in a blue suit that matched her sapphire ring, carrying boxes of local link promotional materials and a surprise she'd been planning for weeks. Jonathan followed shortly after, his usual corporate attire softened by an Italian linen shirt Sarah had given him. "The legacy board is ready," Emma announced, unveiling a digital display next to the wooden box. It showed a beautiful visualization of the pizzeria's history, with photographs, stories, and memories contributed by long-time customers. "Watch this." She pressed a button, and the screen came alive with video messages from local business owners, each sharing how Sarah's pizzeria had influenced their own entrepreneurial journeys. The final clip showed various businesses already using LocalLink, demonstrating how Emma's innovation was building on her mother's legacy. Sarah wiped away tears as she watched. 15 years, she whispered. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, that I was struggling to get a loan, and now your daughter is revolutionizing how small businesses operate," Jonathan finished proudly, "while keeping the heart and soul that you taught her to value." The first guests began arriving at noon, long-time customers who had become friends, local business owners who had supported Sarah through the years, Emma's team from Local Link, and even some of the flight crew she had worked with. The pizzeria filled with laughter, stories, and the irresistible aroma of 15 special pizzas, each representing a year in the restaurant's history. As Sarah moved through the crowd, she heard snippets of conversation that made her heart swell. "Remember when Emma used to do her homework at that corner table? Sarah's pizza got me through my first year of business. Local Link has transformed how we manage deliveries." Jonathan stood near the legacy box, watching Emma demonstrate the Local Link system to a group of interested business owners. She had her mother's way with people, making complex technology feel accessible and personal. But she also had his strategic mind, anticipating questions and offering solutions with confident ease. The celebration reached its peak when Sarah gathered everyone for a speech. Standing between her daughter and Jonathan, she looked out at the faces of people who had become family over the years. 15 years ago, she began, her voice strong with emotion, "I had a dream of creating not just a restaurant, but a place where people could feel at home. Today, that dream has grown beyond anything I could have imagined, thanks to two very special people. She turned to Emma, my daughter, who took the lessons of our small pizzeria and transformed them into a vision for connecting communities of small businesses. You've shown me that success isn't just about preserving tradition. It's about building on it, growing it, sharing it with others. Then she looked at Jonathan, and to someone who came back into our lives unexpectedly, bringing with him the wisdom to help guide our next chapter while respecting the story we'd already written. Emma stepped forward, still wearing the sapphire ring that had started it all. Mom, Dad, I have something for both of you. She retrieved a small package from behind the counter. Inside was a framed photograph taken during one of their Wednesday lunches, the three of them laughing together, covered in flour, absolutely happy. This is my favorite memory of the past year, she said. Not the business success, not the investor meetings, but these moments when we were just family. Jonathan looked at the photograph, remembering the corporate titan he'd been just months ago, so focused on building empires that he'd forgotten to build connections. Now, standing in this warm pizzeria filled with love and laughter, he understood that success could be measured in many ways. Sarah squeezed both their hands. To family, she said softly. To family, they echoed as the celebration continued around them. 15 years of history blending with promises of tomorrow. Outside, London life rushed by as usual, but inside Romano's pizzeria, three people who had found their way back to each other stood surrounded by the proof that sometimes the best things in life come not from careful planning, but from the courage to recognize a second chance when it appears, perhaps in the form of a sapphire ring on an unexpected flight home. As evening approached at Romano's 15th anniversary celebration, the pizzeria took on an almost magical quality. The hanging lights twinkled like stars, casting a warm glow over the gathered crowd. The aroma of the 15 special pizzas lingered in the air, each one telling part of their family's story. Sarah had just served the final anniversary pizza, the future, when Alice burst through the door waving her tablet excitedly. Emma, you won't believe this, she called out, weaving through the crowd. The airline partnership proposal? They've agreed to all our terms, including the community support initiative. A cheer went up from the local Link team, gathered near the digital display. But Emma's first instinct was to look at her parents, finding them already watching her with pride. The sapphire ring caught the light as she raised her hands to quiet the excited chatter. Actually, she said, moving to stand between Sarah and Jonathan, I have an announcement to make. The room quieted, attention focusing on the family at the center of the celebration. Emma took a deep breath, drawing strength from her mother's encouraging smile and her father's steady presence. Local Link was born from the lessons I learned in this pizzeria, she began. Mum taught me that true success comes from building connections, from treating every customer like family. And recently, she glanced at Jonathan, I learned from my father that sometimes the biggest achievements come from having the courage to change course. She turned to address the gathered crowd. The airline partnership is just the beginning. We're establishing the Romano Small Business Initiative, a foundation that will provide support, mentorship and resources to family-owned businesses. And this pizzeria will be its heart. Sarah gasped softly, reaching for Jonathan's hand as Emma continued. Every Wednesday, we'll host strategy sessions here for local business owners. Mum will cook, of course. This earned a laugh from the crowd. And we'll combine Dad's business expertise with Local Link's technology to help other families build their dreams. Jonathan stepped forward. The foundation will be independently funded, he added, understanding his daughter's need to maintain her autonomy. Emma will serve as executive director, bringing together corporate resources and community needs. Sarah wiped away happy tears as she watched her daughter outline the vision, a perfect blend of traditional values and modern innovation, of personal connection and professional growth. But most importantly, Emma concluded, touching the sapphire ring that had started it all, we'll never forget that the biggest successes often come from the smallest moments, like a mother teaching her daughter to knead dough, or a father learning it's never too late to come home. The room erupted in applause, but Emma wasn't finished. She turned to her mother, pulling out an envelope from her jacket. Mum, remember that bank that rejected your loan application 15 years ago? They've agreed to be one of our first corporate sponsors for the foundation. They want to make amends by supporting other entrepreneurs like you. Sarah laughed through her tears. Life has a way of coming full circle, doesn't it? As the celebration continued around them, the three found themselves back at their usual Wednesday lunch table. Sarah had saved them each a slice of every anniversary pizza, arranged in a timeline of their journey together. "Try this one," she said, pushing forward a slice of the very first pizza she'd ever served. "Some recipes only get better with time." Emma took a bite, watching her parents share a quiet look of understanding. The sapphire ring on her finger no longer felt like a connection to the past, but a promise for the future. A future where Wednesday lunches would continue to bring them together, even as their family story expanded to embrace new dreams and possibilities. Outside, the London evening settled into dusk, but inside Romano's pizzeria, the light of family, love, and shared purpose glowed brighter than ever. 1 month after Romano's 15th anniversary celebration, Jonathan arrived for the weekly Wednesday lunch to find the pizzeria humming with a different kind of energy. The tables had been arranged in a conference setting, with local business owners gathering for the first official meeting of the Romano Small Business Initiative. Sarah moved among them, serving her signature pizzas while trading stories and advice. The legacy box held a place of honor near the entrance, now with a new section added for the foundation's beginning. Emma stood at the front of the room, the sapphire ring catching the light as she demonstrated Local Link's latest features. She looked entirely in her element, bridging the gap between traditional business values and technological innovation. "Dad," she called out, spotting him in the doorway. "Perfect timing. We were just about to discuss property negotiations for small businesses." Jonathan smiled, setting down his briefcase and rolling up his sleeves. This was who he was now, not just a corporate success story, but a father sharing his expertise to help others build their dreams. As the session progressed, he watched Emma masterfully weave together different perspectives. She had Sarah's intuitive understanding of people's needs and his own strategic thinking, but the way she combined them was uniquely her own. During a break, the three of them gathered at their usual corner table, sharing a pizza that Sarah had been experimenting with, a new recipe that combined traditional Italian ingredients with contemporary flavors. "What do you think?" Sarah asked, watching them take their first bites. "It's perfect," Emma declared. "Like everything else about our Wednesdays." Jonathan nodded in agreement, looking around at what they had built together. The pizzeria had evolved from a simple restaurant into a hub of community support and innovation. Local Link was transforming from a technology platform into a movement for small business empowerment. And their family had grown from broken pieces into something stronger and more beautiful than any of them had imagined possible. You know," he said, "I spent years building skyscrapers, trying to leave my mark on the London skyline. But what we're creating here, this is the legacy that matters." Sarah reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "Some things are worth waiting for," she said softly. Emma touched the sapphire ring, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "I've been thinking," she said, "about how many twists and turns it took to bring us here. A missed flight, an old ring, a second chance. And plenty of pizza," Sarah added with a laugh. "And love," Jonathan completed. "Enough love to bridge 24 years. Through the window, they could see London life rushing by, busy people hurrying to important meetings, chasing success as Jonathan once had. But here in Romano's pizzeria, surrounded by the warmth of family and the spirit of community, they had found something far more precious. Emma stood to resume the session, but paused for a moment. "Same time next Wednesday." "Always," her parents replied in unison. As the afternoon light filtered through the windows, casting a golden glow over the gathered entrepreneurs, the legacy box stood as a testament to their journey. Inside, alongside the memories of 15 years of pizza making and 1 year of family building, lay the promise of many more Wednesdays to come. For in the end, their story wasn't just about a restaurant, a ring, or a technology platform. It was about 3 people who discovered that success isn't measured in profits or properties, but in the courage to open your heart to new possibilities. It was about a family who learned that sometimes the perfect recipe isn't found in a cookbook, but in the willingness to blend the past with the present, tradition with innovation, and business acumen with love. And it all started with a sapphire ring on an unexpected flight home.